Hello, Fanfest.
Hello, everyone.
Thanks for coming this early. I know it's rough. Welcome to the UI Modernization panel. We are here to tell you about our efforts in the past year to modernize the EVE UI. And here on stage are members of EVE Development that all focus on UI development in one way or another. And I'm just going to have everyone introduce themselves. I am CCP Arrow, User Experience Director.
CCP Surge, UI artist.
I'm CCP Optimal. I'm a senior software engineer.
CCP Sharq, UI designer.
CCP Colgate, software engineer and UI designer.
Awesome. Yeah, so last year, the EVE developers who work on the UI came together at an offsite to make a plan for how to modernize the UI in EVE. We discussed how we wanted our UI to have better identity, better functionality, better usability, and better aesthetics, and had a general discussion about what the UI felt to us, what was the characteristics and kind of the vision for it. But most importantly, we decided on features we believed would bring the most value to the efforts of modernizing the UI. So today, each one of us will give you a short glimpse of these features that we've been developing. First, we'll talk about the stuff that's been happening recently, and then we'll talk about the things that are currently being developed. And we end with things that are in early stages of concepting or in their baby steps of kind of getting into the client in some format. We'll talk briefly about each topic and then take questions from all of those topics. If there's any additional questions that we don't have time for, it's all right because we have a UI roundtable right after the session where we can kind of pick up where we left off. We'll start with CCP Surge, who's going to tell you a bit about his involvement with the new notification system. Take it away.
All right. Thanks, guys. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about notifications, which was a feature we launched with Oceanus as an opt-in beta feature that we slowly developed. This is a feature that I started developing over with Team Pirate Unicorns this past summer. Notifications were basically our attempt to come up with a unified messaging system that could be used by any number of EVE features, existing or future, to deliver people information in a timely fashion and a way that people could customize their sort of experience and what information they got from various parts of the game. So a little bit about this feature. You've probably seen something like this before. Notifications have become pretty ubiquitous in a lot of modern software of a certain complexity. I'm talking Facebook, mostly OS systems. You can see your like Steam overlay, stuff like that. They all deliver this, and it's become a pretty standard practice. People are used to seeing these kind of things, and we said about designing the one for EVE, we pretty much took a look at this. It was fairly straightforward with the messages that come up. You get a little visual icon. Here's the one that we ended up developing for EVE. You get an icon, a quick message about the system that's providing you the message, and just a brief field for the message itself. Of course, with EVE, there's a number of different game systems that are giving you all kinds of various information, delivering that to you. And we wanted to give you a chance to customize the experience a little bit. Some of these things that we did with notifications were new, for example, or allowing you to move the widget, seeing where the pop-ups would come up. We wanted to give you a chance to, of course, shut off the features that were, you didn't want to be notified. And for the most part, this was pretty well received by players. Mm-hmm. So next, I wanted to talk a little bit about our plans, where we want to take notifications, some of the things we're still looking at, some problems we've identified. One of the things are the interactability of them. This is a feature that some people might have never discovered, but you can actually click on the notifications before they fade away on your screen, and they will take you, they'll open up the window for their associated system. Some of them, now, we have so many complex systems that some will take you there, some just don't have an associated thing for contacts, for example. And we acknowledge this is a problem. People don't know about this. We're not sure what we want to do about it yet, but basically showing you something about whether the notifications are actually interactable, getting better feedback on that. The I never noticed that notification because it faded away too quickly was a problem that we had encountered when developing the new player experience. This is kind of another reason we decided to do the notification feature, because we wanted to message people with regards to our new opportunity system. And we wanted to tell them to basically have an unintrusive way of telling them when they'd accomplished a thing in the game or done something. However, we found out that due to limited attention spans, basically a lot of people don't notice that little thing coming up in the upper right-hand corner, especially new players who are already just so overwhelmed and immersed in doing the thing they're doing in the center of their screen, and that actually more advanced players were the ones who got the most use out of notifications. So we're still trying to tackle that. Another thing we are going to be exploring is whether the notification widget will be able to dock on your Neocom. There's a concept below that you can see that has a kind of a better badge, and if you could see the mail on the Neocom section, that will show you how many new mails you've got. Perhaps notifications will live in there. We still haven't quite figured that all out, but that's something we're exploring. And the last thing that we are also in the process of talking about, but all the notifications you currently get are facing your character. I mean, they relate to your in-game character and in-game stuff itself. But we're looking at the possibility of introducing things like, account expiration kind of things. Potentially telling people to vote for CSM candidates, et cetera. Other kind of things that are on a higher level, and perhaps we would, do something different, like a different visual stylization. So you kind of know when those notifications come in that they're for your out of game account level and not your in-game character. That's what I got.
All right, cool. Okay, so next up we have CCP Optimal, who worked on the reskinning of the EVE UI and created new color theme systems for it, and he has some interesting insights into that.
First of all, are we going to take the questions all at the end, or should we take them in
since
between?
no one's already queued up, let's just at least go on for a while.
All right then.
And then we'll see. If they start lining up like the whole room, then we'll do something about it.
Figure out a new plan. But yeah, hi again. I'm CCP Optimal, and I'm going to take you quite briefly through the UI reskinning effort that we went through and delivered in Rhea last December. To begin with, here's a design overview sheet of the new skin. As you can see, we went for a much sleeker, more sci-fi, modern, simpler kind of look. It's noteworthy that all of the highlight effects in the new UI skin are supposed to resemble light being turned on, as opposed to with the previous skin, it was more like representing actual physical buttons. Yeah. Didn't Apple
punching in and punching out.
Didn't Apple have some fancy design word for it, skeuomorphism or something? I assume they just invented. But yeah. Additionally, we completely changed how we apply the two theme colors to the UI. Previously, we were doing weird things like taking the highlight color and applying that to the background of many large UI objects, such as the scroll, basically limiting us to very dark tones of color for the highlight color as well. So pretty much all of the color themes with the old way of things that actually worked out aesthetically had to be incredibly dark, so we unlocked the potential of having at least somewhat brighter colors for the highlight color. Still, of course, EVE is supposed to be a dark game, so we didn't just go crazy. We redefined the color themes. At the time being, we have 21 of them. And another thing that we spent quite a lot of time on was the new background effect for Windows. The point of this work was that we wanted to move away from the quite claustrophobic feel that you sometimes end up with when you've carpeted the scene with windows, which many players just have to do. So what we wanted to do was to allow people to see through them a bit more without the cost of having these things that bleed through interfere too much with the contents of said windows. So what we ended up with, without going into too much technical jargon, we basically take a copy of the back buffer, which is what the scene itself gets rendered to. We apply a blur effect. Then we take essentially the brightness of each pixel in that resulting buffer and let it shine through, or have it like brighten the UI background color a bit. So this is what you get. And we feel that it makes, it gives, it was quite a balancing act to find this perfect spot or sweet spot where, we were seeing through the UI without it interfering too much. But here you can see for comparison how the same setup looks like without the blur effect. Here, both the window in behind and the scene itself, the sun, I think it is interfering quite a lot with the contents of the window. And it makes sense that since you have that window up in front, then you're showing intent in the contents of that window and not what's behind it. So yeah. We also, this was a huge effort mostly on the designers. We did completely revamp the icons, most of the icons in the game. You'll notice these mostly in the Neocom. Honestly, this was probably the hottest topic with this revamp. And it was very a lot of people were very skeptical, me included, I'll definitely admit. Removing color completely from the icons, it sounds like a crazy idea to begin with. But once you've gotten used to it, because the shapes here are so much cleaner and clearer and simpler than what we had previously. They were like little pieces of art, really. And when you take little pieces of art and squeeze them down to 32 by 32, it just becomes a blob. But that's not a problem with these new icons. So once you have learned them, it's very easy to tell them apart. And it took me like half a day to just completely love this icon set. And most of our test subjects, of course, you're never going to be able to please everyone, and it is a huge change, but like pretty much all of our test subjects had the same or similar story to tell. To wrap this up, I dug up a little bit of data on this reskinning effort. To the left, you can see all of the 21 color themes that we have to choose from, ordered by popularity. It's noteworthy that, well, the top one isn't really a color theme, but it's just the default selection. And 70% of our players seem to be just quite content with the default color theme that we assign to them, which is based on the bloodline race of the character in question. After that, the dark matter color theme is the most popular by a huge margin, as in of those who actually choose a color theme. But realistically, Galente is probably the most popular one. assuming that like roughly it's a 4-way split of races, which I'm not quite sure of. Like, but anyway, it's also quite interesting to note that the bottom 5 or 6 color themes kind of form a very familiar camo army-like palette. And those are, like, again, the least popular ones. I don't know if it's because EVE players are such a peaceful bunch that they don't want to associate themselves with something so violent. That's my best guess, at least. Something we were quite happy with, 91% of our players keep the window blur effect on. It would have been quite terrible if half of you were turning it off or something like that. And then finally, well, I have, yeah, 6% of the players use the match theme color to active ship, which is a fun little feature, which is good pickup because it's off by default, and this is something that not everybody wants, but some people like it. And then one thing finally, which I don't think is up on there on the slide, is that 90% of players roughly play with full transparency. So it seems that you guys agree with us that you want to like have a more light feel to the UI than you were able to previously. So yeah, over to you, Arrow.
Thank you. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the overview and bracket icons. Recently, we released a blog about this. I came on the 07 show and I talked about it a little bit, and we collected a lot of feedback on the forums as well as from the CC feedback thread. And we kind of just took our time to kind of dive into the feedback and read through it and try to understand kind of the messages behind what people are saying. And, you know, there was a lot of interesting discussion that happens. You know, on a Reddit thread, someone was using Space Invaders as a reference to what it resembled, which was a funny thread, and someone even took the effort of visualizing it. So here's someone like, oh, check out this link. And then we checked out the link. And I posted it on Twitter, and someone took it even further. My TV said, well, I took a pass at it, and it inspired me to create a little game. So he created a little link for that, which was a Space Invader game using the new icons. And I actually played it. It was a full screen browser game, and it got pretty addictive. You know, the score there is definitely not the highest that I reached. I spent way too much time in this instead of doing some actual work. But it was a fun kind of discussion. But we definitely, you know, the new trend is to really seriously look at feedback and take it seriously. It's not just a buzzword that we want to use every time. And based on the feedback, we went back and took a look at our initial goals for the ship groups, which was to create this collection of icons that you could tell at a glance were part of a ship group collection. Now that clashes a little bit with the idea of using icons that are very different from each other to very easily distinct between purpose or roles or whatever you have. So that definitely colored the discussion a lot. Also, as you can see in this example, there's a 32 by 32 example. The ones you actually see in game are the 16 by 16. And that was a huge part of the discussion as well, that you know, the current overview only allows you to show so many pixels, so how can you really separate things visually? And that's definitely one of the efforts that we want to move on to next, is just find a way to allow players to choose the size and have everything actually scale in proportion. And you know, it's not something we can invest into with the same release, so we ended up just kind of pushing the release of these and maybe do a more bigger effort of just exploring options with size variations, as well as kind of looking back at the initial goals with these icons. So one of the big things that we did was we wanted to separate easily between NPCs and ships, but still be able to allow players to kind of learn one over the other. So if someone starts playing EVE, starts mission running, starts encountering certain icons, then when they start encountering players, they'll kind of learn those icons as well. We used a little plus, which was kind of a reference to the old way of identifying NPCs in the upper right corner. It was hard to kind of tell apart so we went back to the drawing board and explored ways to maybe have them be kind of empty on the inside as a reference to the fact that NPCs aren't real players, and then the players are these more filled ones, because that's, there's a pod and there's a human inside of it. And that kind of got us into a path of exploring more things. I'll go into that a bit later. And then finally, we also looked at drones. Now, the initial pass on drones was to separate them into a lot of granular difference between roles as well as sizes. And then we realized, kind of based on just seeing how it looked on the test servers as well as reading through the feedback, that it went too far. We had too much granular separation between different roles, and players didn't really see the point in having that many differences. So here's actually a new iteration of kind of pushing that back a little bit, still having some separation, so there's not just like, oh, here's a drone icon. There's still going to be some variations, but they're definitely not as many as we initially came up with. Just taking it kind of, there's the one that has electronics, and then there's just the 3 different sizes, instead of saying it's this type of electronic, and then there's like 4 versions of that with 3 different sizes. So it's definitely scaling it way back. And going back to the ship groups, we noticed in mass tests from players that the icons that we created a lot of graphical blobs in big fleet fights. You would look at the screen and you would just see a lot of pixels on the screen. So we actually, when we were thinking about this separation between NPCs and ships, even though the initial idea of having them kind of empty on the inside because there wasn't a player was in theory a good idea, it actually sounded better to just swap it, because when you're encountering players, there might be a lot of them, and then you want to have less amount of pixels. And then when you're encountering NPCs, you're not going to encounter nearly as many as you can have with players. Well, if you have that kind of a fleet fight, I'm sorry for you. But no one really encounters as many NPCs at once as they do with players. So we actually looked at ways to just swap that, and looked at how we could maybe just use that initial idea that we went with for NPC ships and just say, maybe this should be player ships instead. And maybe even try to make it even less pixels. So here's like a very recent iteration of having the lines even thinner for player ships, and just been exploring a lot of these different things. Some of you might have seen this latest iteration on CC before we kind of pulled it, because one of the problems that we have with our CC test server is that that's actually the thing that we are rolling out next. So since we decided to push the release of these, we couldn't really keep it on CC, which is definitely something we should have a discussion about internally. If there's a way for us to have something like duality for things that we want to explore for a longer duration than just the amount of time that we have from CC until deployment. Because now, of course, with this new 6-week release cadence, we just don't have enough time if we want to do some more testing to keep something on CC, because that is actually the version that is going out. So it sadly went out of CC, but maybe we can find a way to pull it into duality, even though we understand that it's more effort for players to kind of invest in also downloading that client separately. And then finally, we've been exploring even further ideas for just kind of going back and looking at our initial goals for these icons. The idea behind having this common shape that you can kind of identify at a glance and say, okay, I know this is a ship, is good, theoretically, but knowing just how militaristic UIs work, you usually want to have something very differently shaped between different purposes or different encounters, so that you can just on the spot know exactly not just that it's a ship, but what kind of a ship, what kind of a role, and if it's an enemy or a friend. So we looked at ways to make these even more abstract, so each ship group would have a totally different shape from each other. That, of course, on itself is definitely going to be more readable, but how will that work with all these other icons that we currently use? Because we're also showing a lot of different things in the overview for navigation points. So that sparked an interesting discussion about, maybe there should be a way to separate between combat mode and navigation mode, and then you don't have to worry about encountering these similar shapes at the same time. So we definitely just realized that it was worth kind of investing more development time, looking at how everything comes together, looking at ways to maybe do more improvements to the overview, all these different, relationship indicators that you have overlapping the icons currently in the overview. What do we want to do with those? And then also, finally, we also did some passes on kind of making the drone icons more abstract, and just see if that was something we thought would be beneficial to players. So all these discussions that we kind of saw on the forums and in other medias around different kind of pain points and pros and cons, we've definitely taken into account in this new exploration, and all these new iterations kind of are based on that, and then we're definitely going to probably do more explorations before we end up releasing this. But we're not giving up. We're definitely on a track to get this into the client. We believe this is an effort that's worth it as long as we do it the right way. So the plan is to do more investigation based on the player feedback, revisit the goals, just explore a lot of iteration options, maybe find ways to put it onto test servers that don't have to be part of a specific next release. Investigate how the color tags that are popping on top of the icons can work. Look at ways to, just fix this zooming problem with the overview. Definitely going to see if we can have an option for players to have separate sizes between space and overview, because even though someone might want 32 by 32 in their overview, they probably don't want that in the spacing. So there's a lot of different things that we're going to look at, and we definitely want this to happen in 2015, but we don't want to rush it either. So yeah, that's it for that. And next is Colgate with star map discussions.
Yes, yes, I'm CCP Colgate, and I've been working on the map since last September, I think, when the modernization project started. So, yeah, as a part of the UI modernization, we decided we wanted to improve the map, both visually and usability of it. And instead of refactoring it into the old map, we decided just to go for a total rematch. So it was a complete rewrite from ground up. There used to be two maps, of course, the universe system and a universe map and the solar system map, which we merged seamlessly into one. And then we added a lot of flexibility to customize the map further down the road. We have much better layout handling, coloring, and labeling, and tagging, and info boxes, and etc. One of the biggest changes of the refactoring was to tear it out of the full screen setup, which has been since day one. This, of course, gives the players much better flexibility when laying out the UI, but gives us also possibilities of, for example, running multiple maps at the same time, and maybe this later further down the road. So this makes it possible to run the map outside of the EVE client, which we have tried out, but we haven't decided if or when we are going to do it, but it is possible now. And this window setup could technically be applied to other full-screen UIs like PI or ISIS3 if you want it later on. We decided to have it as opt-in beta because of the complexity of it, of course, but more importantly, just to get direct feedback from you while we are working on it. Was very, very good, and we got a lot of good feedback and suggestions which are taken into account and already implemented a lot of it. So this map layout is, for example, just an idea which came up on the forums to lay the map out by jumps instead of some hierarchy, which I like very much. And hopefully you will see this in next iteration, not this iteration, but the next after. Many have asked what will happen to the F11 or the minimap, and in short, it will go eventually. So there is actually no need for the browsing capability of it, and only thing missing from the in the new 3D solar system is the D-scan. So technically, when we have that in, we could just turn it off and have a standalone solar system view. And the next big steps in the process, we will, of course, continue work on this until we are feature complete to the old map. There is not much left, but there's always something. And after that, then we will probably make it explicit. So you would either be running the new or the old map. So all the links would lead to the new map. There are a lot of other code linking into the map from various directions. So we need to support all of that. When that is done, we will probably make the new one default, but leave the old map in as a fallback for some time. And when that cools down, we will probably just go and tear the old map entirely out. But yeah, so that is the process as it has been so far. While we will be working on these steps, I mentioned we will also be, of course, implementing more. We have a huge task list, which are compiled from the forums and from us ourselves. So, but we will keep iterate on this in every release and potentially in between releases as well. So we'll just, yeah, try to finish this at least at some point.
All right.
That's it.
Great. So now we have Sharq.
Hi. How you doing? I'm good. Did you survive the pub crawl? Apparently you did. Somebody's sleeping out there.
No,
I don't
he's
know.
meditating. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the spatial awareness and navigation in the EVE client. This is basically more or less theory crafting. I'm almost spitballing up here because, I mean, this is just a theory. It hasn't been tested. We haven't started prototyping or anything, but this is something we want to look at in the coming future. So one of the problems we find in, at least when I'm playing, and a lot of people have told me that you sometimes feel a bit lost in client. It's just the experience of figuring out where you are positioned in the system, and how the system is relevant to your position. You have the viewport, which is pretty narrow, and then you have the overview, which is pretty abstract as well. So, when you're new to the game, you don't really realize where you're positioned within the system. So you become a bit lost sometimes. The idea is basically for a new system. I mean, these systems are more or less in place now, but it's just iteration on them and sort of a UX pass on that. The compass we did for the overlay helped a bit with getting your bearings sometimes, but it's not enough. So the idea is basically to have a 3-state zoom level on when you're playing. So you have the ship in your face view, and you have the grid view, which is basically an iteration on the tactical overlay. And then you have the solar system. So you would have your ship, you would zoom out one step, you would have the grid, and we would iterate on the grid, on the tactical overlay, and give you a proper tactical overlay for situational awareness, so you could actually make decisions in fleet battles or in mining or mission running or whatever you're doing. So this would be the first step, just in your face cam for mission running, traveling, space, docking or admiring your ship. Not a lot of people play like this, but it's always nice to zoom in a bit and see the rift you're flying or whatever you're navigating. So, and then to allow you to zoom out or trigger the next state and give you a proper radar sort of view. The current tactical overlay, it's not very good at what it's doing. It's not projecting the brackets correctly onto the plane. By fixing, that's sort of the first iteration we're thinking about, is give you a proper projection onto the plane, so it gives you a tactical overlay of the situation, so you could actually work with it. Because, I mean, as it currently is, especially in fleet fights, you just get the blobs, and it's really hard to sort of figure out what's going on, and you use the overview, and you sort by name to target calls or whatever. So if we would be able to actually give you a sensible sort of sorting of the brackets or groups in the viewport. That would be optimal. And also just navigating within the system is a bit wonky. I mean, you use the overview. Sometimes it's hard to use the viewport to navigate. And I mean, most people resort to right-click in the space to navigate, which is not really emergent and not very sexy. So the third step of this navigation would basically be to zoom from the grid and get the system. And we've basically been testing this a bit.
Yeah, tried a bit out, but we are not there yet.
Yeah, so the idea is basically not just to place a picture of the solar system in the center of the screen, but to actually zoom out and scale the solar system so you would get the planets and everything on the orbits, so you could use that for navigation. That would put you in your place in the system and give you a better idea of how things are actually laid out. As I said before, this is just theory crafting. We haven't started prototyping or anything, but me at least, I'm very excited about looking into this. We're trying to tackle a couple of problems. It's basically navigation, in-system navigation, and also tactical spatial awareness and give you a proper tactical tool. So, I mean, in the near future, we're going to start prototyping in client. And I mean, this system might end up being something completely different, but this is sort of what we're aiming towards. So let's see what happens. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, so we've touched on a few subjects here, and now we can take some questions or discussions or challenges. And if we, run out of time, we have a UI roundtable right after this session, so don't worry. All right, you, sir, on the right here.
Hey. So I love everything you've done so far. I just want to say it's been really great to see it change over the past year. Super happy. I have one comment on the map. It's really not very good for colorblind people, especially with the star background. It just makes it very confusing, like sizes don't distinguish. So you might want to take a look at that, like put your colorblind glasses on and see what you see.
Point taken.
I just had a question about, like, how easy is it going to be to do more UI improvement? Like, what's your framework like now? Did you rewrite the framework, or did you just reskin everything that you used to have? Is that like, I know that you use Python in part of your engine, and Python is really terrible for GUI, so like, just can you give maybe a 1-minute thing on like what the backend technology is like, just to let us know?
We have our own homebrew UI framework called Carbon UI that we actually did revamp. Me and Friggy were on that project like, what, 3 years ago, 4 years ago or something?
Yeah.
And then we actually rewrote the foundations of that UI framework. You say that Python is bad for UI. It's like not completely true, in my opinion. The frameworks that exist, many of them are quite poor compared to, other than, but these, writing in Python is actually quite nice, given that the framework that you are writing against is, decent. Yeah. But yeah, during this like UI reskinning, we weren't really rewriting the framework itself. We were just, like it says in the title, reskinning it. So, but it's an ever ongoing process. Though. We are always like tuning and adding and removing and playing around with the framework, because we have that luxury and curse of having a homemade framework that we can and must maintain it. So.
Yeah, it comes with a lot of pros, but it has the cons of kind of us juggling between the decision of putting manpower into actually adding features to the framework or adding features to the game.
Yeah, you never get like the next version, for free, as if you would be working with a third-party solution.
Because we're all, the same people work on both. So that's kind of the situation. But good question, great question. We'll switch over to the left here.
Okay, first I really like the idea of getting the windows out of EVE, so actually one time I possibly will see which ship I'm flying. But about the first speaker, about the notification, for me it would be really great if you could put the notification also in EVE Gate, because then I can open EVE Gate on another screen and a lot of clutter is already gone.
Yeah, that's
so that was just a suggestion.
Yeah, I
That's a
think
good
it's
suggestion.
a really good suggestion. Just have the ability to push it to any other device and then just clear that out of the client space.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Okay, back here.
Hi. One very brief thing with the, similar to the point earlier, you use color to differentiate things a lot, and I do like the way you're going with the new icons, but they do need to be distinctly different in terms of purely their shape, because if you only, color is great for those of us who can use color to differentiate, but if you can't, they really do need to actually have, you know, you quite often you're doing ones and the NPC ones and the player ones are the same things but different color. But my actual thing on that last presentation, I'm getting really excited because there's a thing I've been pushing for is very much like that. It's a 3-tiered system of views where you can customize each one for what you're using it for, and pretty much on that same level of being on the ship, then a tactical overlay. I'd sort of named the second two as the tactical area command system and the strategic areas command system, meaning TACs and SACs. But I was sort of adding in extra features to that, and I was having a discussion earlier that this could potentially go into the map, but this new system would probably be better. That if you're trying to command a fleet or a navy, it's a collection of fleets with the new sovereignty system, that what you want to be able to do is see on these displays precisely where your units are, where your fleet are, actually have information on that, like who's shooting who, who's targeting who, that kind of information. But you could also, in these new views, rather than having to deal with the overlay, what would be really fantastic is if you could just sort of grab, you know, this lot of players here, highlight, grab those, instruct these people, shoot that person. Yep. And actually literally command, and then on the grander scale with the tactical system, on the solar system level, actually be able to say, okay, this fleet go here, this fleet go here, you know, and just give the commands that way, where you can visually see what's going on.
That's a very nice idea. I mean, that's sort of one of the things I've been having has been brewing in my head. Is like the war table analogy, and this would just be. I mean, I can just see envision this. I mean, drag and drop to give commands would be just awesome. Yeah, and also, you know, with a system like this, you could use, because it would be such an abstraction of the layout and in the information, you could actually pair, you know, enemies, you know, to one side and blues to the other side, and all sorts of things like that, or lodges on with this side and damage on the other side or whatever.
Yeah, and on a similar view with the solar system layout, and the view you showed at the end of the solar system, you got it proportional to where stuff is, which means you land up with a whole cluster of stuff in the middle and then a few bits spread out. Yeah. You don't actually, because we magically warp from grid to grid, it doesn't actually matter how far they are apart. So if you could actually just resize it so that everything is scaled out, so that, you know, you can actually see, okay, there is a planet, there are the moons around it, there's an asteroid belt, nothing is ever actually clustered on top of each other. Because it doesn't actually have to be an accurate representation of where stuff actually is in the solar system. Absolutely. Just relative positions, not their actual distances between each other.
Thanks very much for your input. It would be nice to have a chat with you later on.
All right, we're going to move back to the left side here.
In terms of the ship icons and the classes and the differentiation between them, I noticed that they're still, along with the same original concept, fleshed out each individual, you know, like mining frigate and frigates, and then you've got all the way up through Titans and super super carriers and carriers and stuff, all having their own specific icon for their very specific class. Is there a reason why there's specifically icons for differentiating, say, a mining frigate or a rookie frigate from the rest of the frigates themselves, especially with the rookie frigate, or the mining frigate only having, what, the Venture and the Prospect? I mean, that's two specific ships that have their own icon. Is there a specific reason to do that, or you can't just lump them in with frigates?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting point that you're making because originally the icons had the purpose of kind of differentiating just ships for any purpose when you're kind of looking at the different catalog of ships in the identification system. And then, of course, there you just needed to have these icons if there was a specific group for them, even though maybe that group didn't have more than 2 types. But then when you're looking at it from a standpoint of putting them in the overview, where it's all about kind of, you know, having a really good reason to separating them visually. And that's definitely something we should just look at. Like, you know, do you really need to know what kind of specific size mining ship it is, or do you just need to know that it's a mining ship?
Yeah, because a lot of us just use the overview icons, at least currently right now, for is it a player ship, and is it a small, large, or, you know, a very large player ship? Like, is it something I have to worry about, or is it not? You know, if we need any more information, we've got the type column, which will tell us specifically the ship type or class or role. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a discussion. Like, if players will not see a reason to have more granular information than that, then, of course, the goal kind of falls flat. So if that will be the discussion that we see, we will definitely revisit that standpoint.
All
right. All big changes will always cause riots. And where do you actually draw the line for too much change and too little change?
Good point.
I don't think there is like a generic answer to that. I mean, it is definitely we, you know, just listen to all of the open channels that we have, you know, the forums, Twitter, Reddit, and whatnot.
Fanfest.
The test server, mass tests, and so forth. But in, you know, we don't really have. Not everything is quantifiable, really. So in many cases, we'll just have to like use those measurements, you know, from all of those sources, and our own gut feeling for sure, to some extent. And we do like internal user testing as well in many cases. So I'm afraid there's not like any magic formula. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There is always going to be rioting when we make big changes. But you know, sadly and maybe not so sadly, we just need to make big changes in many cases. In many cases, people have just become hopelessly, you know, used to some system that was never very good to begin with. Yeah. So we just need to rip off the patch in many cases.
We definitely have a better strategy for kind of validating than we did a few years ago, where we look at what people are saying, but then we go and we validate if that's an actual concern by just looking at the data of usage or like running tests. And through that effort, we actually also kind of we see if something is actually a problem or not, and then we maybe find a solution through just that observation as well. So that's always the thing that we do to kind of validate if there's a concern. But it's definitely, you're right, there's always going to be concern with change. You know, if there's something that's been a certain way for 10 years, even though it's not the best it could be, the players have become expert users with that current system. And it's always going to be a hurdle for them to move to anything else, no matter how great it might be for a new player to maybe use. So we have to be really just aware of that problem for players and see if the thing that we're actually introducing instead is something they can evolve to quickly. And if it's something they're never going to be right with, maybe there was something that got lost in the process. So we definitely look at that specifically.
It's a fine line, I just want to add. And one of the things that we also use for that is usability testing, which is one of the mantras is watch what players do instead of what they say so much. So oftentimes, like you said, changes, people are going to get used to changes no matter what. But validating whether those changes are actually a better system, you have to actually watch people play, watch people use them, and gather data on that.
Yeah?
Just a very quick one more, that is, for Sharq, the new view. When you are in tactical view, and if you keep zooming out, and when you are zoomed a certain way out, it would be nice to actually zoom out to the world map, but it's in a zoomed-in view of the system you are in. So if you can keep zooming out into the world map too.
Absolutely, but
yeah, it would, but yeah, it's very hard to do, and we tried it once, very long time ago. Some of you maybe recall the seamless map in EVE, but it's basically how the world is built up, and the sizes we are dealing with is basically very hard for us to do technically. But we could look into solve this by some crossfading or cutscening, or at least we need to switch setups there in between. So it's very difficult to do it seamlessly. So that is the main problem. But yeah,
but that would push
we would like to do it, definitely.
Yeah, that would position yourself totally within the world. It would be beautiful. Absolutely.
All right, user over here.
Right. This is a question about the beta map, and specifically when you're throwing scan probes around. In the current map system, the scan probes they're fairly tightly integrated with the whole system map and everything. Have you started trying to work out how you're going to integrate that into the new beta map?
I already integrated the current setup as it is, just right over. But of course, it looks like you are able to scan other systems, but of course, we are not supporting that. So yeah, but first phase is basically just get the current functionality over to the new map as it is, and then we wanted to iterate on it, but it's a huge system, and we didn't want it to hold off the map, progress itself basically.
The new map is kind of busy, and when you're trying to scan things, the more busy rubbish there is between you and the little dots and circles and
but the thing is, the probe scanning is actually just within a small solar system map, which is within the big one. So when we take out the F11 minimap, this could actually just be part of that window per se. So it could be a specific scanning mode there, serving the probe scanning and de-scanning if you want. So at least we just had to get the functionality over as a first pass, basically. Thank you.
I guess they're queuing us.
Time.
All right, well, you guys over here, we're going to definitely take your questions in the UI roundtable. I think I can see you guys through the lights. Thank you all very much for coming. We will be, like I said, in the EVE UI roundtable. It's in roundtable 3, Amar, which is very fitting, I guess. And hope to see most of you there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.